Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Dawn was approaching, and even as Bai Xiaochun crept along cautiously, thinking about possibly leaving Middle Peak, a blood-colored butterfly appeared right in front of him. His eyelids twitched, and without any hesitation, he leapt off in another direction. Booms rang out, along with numerous cold snorts. You think you can flee Middle Peak? Impossible, Night Crypt, young lady Shui Mei ordered you dead. Since she's going to take responsibility, there's no way you'll escape. The Foundation establishment cultivators' killing intent surged, and the light of magical items rose into the sky as everyone attacked Bai Xiaochun. Seeing that he was surrounded and incapable of fleeing, Bai Xiaochun gritted his teeth. By now his eyes were completely bloodshot. You people push things too far, he said, letting out a powerful roar. At the same time, the mountain-shaking bash appeared in his mind, a divine ability that could be unleashed after reaching the first level of the Undying Heavenly King. Before, he hadn't been able to use it, but considering his recent accomplishments, he decided he might as well utilize it. I can't use techniques from the Spirit Stream sect. But since these people are trying to kill me, I can try to kill them. Unfortunately, I'm all alone, which puts me at a pretty big disadvantage. Despite how he was roaring at the top of his lungs, he was actually thinking of how to escape. Suddenly, his flesh and blood quivered, and he unleashed explosive power. That explosion was a convergence of all the power he had at his disposal, transformed into a bashing attack that could crush anything in its path. Blood-colored light emanated from Bai Xiaochun, and rumbling sounds could be heard as he barreled forward. He vanished into a blur, and then, one of the Foundation establishment cultivators who had just been about to launch a divine ability let out a miserable shriek. Bai Xiaochun bashed into him, along with 3 other nearby Foundation establishment cultivators. It almost looked as if the group of 4 was one person. Bai Xiaochun's bashing attack caused them all to cough up mouthfuls of blood. They tumbled backward through the air, looks of shock and fear appearing on their faces. They landed 300 meters away, where they coughed up more blood and forcibly shook off the power of the attack that had just hit them. Everyone else in the area gasped at the way Bai Xiaochun had opened a path for himself. In the blink of an eye, he was off of Middle Peak, much to the shock of everyone present. I can't believe this Night Crypt is so strong. Is he really an early Foundation establishment? He just bashed elder brother Joe, and he's in mid-Foundation establishment. Who would have thought we would offend someone like that? Well, we can't let him escape. Young lady Shui Mei said that he must die. Everyone exchanged glances, and then Master God Diviner gritted his teeth and gave chase. A moment later, the rest of the dozens of cultivators joined him. A whole line of people raced after Bai Xiaochun as he sped through the bloodstream sect. When he looked back and saw them, he got even angrier than before, and finally gritted his teeth. I'll go to Corpse Peak. The Grand Elder there likes me, and according to sect rules, the people from Middle Peak don't have any authority on another mountain peak. Eyes flashing with determination, he turned his head and then pointed at the Middle Peak Foundation establishment cultivators. If you people think you're tough, you'd better keep chasing your Lord Night Crypt. Anybody that doesn't chase me is a wuss. His words caused the killing intent in their eyes to grow even more focused, and they chased him with greater speed than before. However, none of them were a match for Bai Xiaochun's speed as he headed toward Corpse Peak. As soon as he arrived, he waved his hand and produced a jade pendant, which emanated fluctuations that let him pass right through the protective spell formation and onto Corpse Peak itself. The people from Middle Peak didn't have such qualifications, and were prevented from entering. Night Crypt. Gritting their teeth, they could only glare in rage at Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun stopped in place, stuck his chin up and then looked at the group standing outside of Corpse Peak. Come on, I'm standing right here waiting for you. Bring it on, let's fight to the death. His wording was very domineering and arrogant, causing the Foundation establishment cultivators' killing intent to intensify. However, there was nothing they could do. Unless they had a special command medallion, they couldn't enter Corpse Peak without requesting special permission. Well, if you don't dare to fight me to the death, I guess there's nothing left to do. Shaking his head, he flicked his sleeve, ignoring them as he headed up Corpse Peak. Of course, the higher-ranking leaders of the Bloodstream sect saw what was happening, but didn't interfere. In fact, some of the Prime Elders on Ancestor Peak found the whole thing very amusing. It's been a long time since we've had a good commotion in the sect. That bashing attack looks similar to the things they do on Lesser Marsh Peak. That kid Night Crypt is pretty amusing. I can't believe he got so many people to chase him. Not bad, not bad. I'm a bit surprised he fled to Corpse Peak. If the kid stays alive, he might become another chosen in the bloodstream sect. Bai Xiaochun sped along on Corpse Peak. Whenever he encountered local Dharma protectors, he would show them his jade pendant. After looking at it for a moment, they would ignore him. Eventually, he reached the upper finger, passing quite a few corpse refineries on the way. Overall, Corpse Peak was filled with quite a sinister air. Thankfully, he had his jade pendant, otherwise it would have been a very dangerous situation. Soon he was standing outside of the Immortals cave belonging to Corpse Peak's Grand Elder. Night Crypt seeks an audience with the Grand Elder of Corpse Peak, he said loudly, clasping hands and bowing. A moment later, the door opened and 2 attendants appeared. After seeing it was Bai Xiaochun, they motioned for him to follow. It only took a moment for Bai Xiaochun to identify the 2 young servants as refined corpses. Heart-pounding with nervousness, he took a deep breath and momentarily considered fleeing. But then, he put a respectful expression onto his face and entered the Immortals cave. Before long, he was standing in front of the cross-legged Grand Elder. He looked at Bai Xiaochun, smiling, a thoughtful expression in his eyes. He had also been watching the case play out earlier. What do you think? Corpse Peak is far superior, don't you think? Didn't I say before that you should pick us? We have everything you could need. Besides, Middle Peak is completely out of control. Standing behind the Grand Elder was a pretty young woman with an expressionless face, who was currently massaging his shoulders. Bai Xiaochun instantly identified her as another refined corpse, and a high-level one at that. Strangely, Bai Xiaochun couldn't see a single hair on her head, making him wonder if perhaps she had hair growing elsewhere. Although he was curious to know the truth, he didn't dare to ask any questions. Those people are outrageous, he said in response to the Grand Elder's words. I was just working on one of my techniques, and they wanted to stop me. They even tried to kill me. If I hadn't run fast enough, I might have lost my poor little life. The Grand Elder laughed heartily. That's just how we do things in the bloodstream sect. They wouldn't really have killed you, just severely injured you. Although, I have to say, it's not very often you see someone in the bloodstream sect get so many people to chase them. You little brat. A single glance is all I need to see what a little devil you are. Well, in any case, just stay here on Corpse Peak. There's no need to even go back to Middle Peak. The more the Grand Elder saw of Bai Xiaochun, the more he liked him. Bai Xiaochun was very moved by how well the Grand Elder of Corpse Peak treated him. He didn't even need to ask for what he wanted, the Grand Elder took the initiative to give it to him. Taking a deep breath, he quickly nodded. After a moment of thought, the Grand Elder looked at Bai Xiaochun and in a very serious tone said, by the way, those Foundation Establishment Dharma protectors don't matter. But you can't provoke Shui Mei. She has a powerful background. Just stay out of her way and do not aggravate her under any circumstances. Bai Xiaochun was a bit irritated about that. If he didn't have to keep a low profile and conceal his true identity, he would point out that he was a prestige disciple of the Spirit Stream sect, the Legacy Echelon Designate, and a Heaven Dao Foundation Establishment expert. Any one of those would be enough to shock the wench Shui Mei so badly her mask would fall off. HMPH. She has a powerful background, he grumbled inwardly. My background is terrifying even to me. With that he stood up a bit straighter, making himself look even more haughty than before. The Grand Elder could see that Bai Xiaochun was a bit irritated. Chuckling, he went on to explain to Bai Xiaochun about some of the medicinal incense that was used in corpse refining. It was only when night fell that he let him go and told him to go do some research of his own, after which one of the attendants took him to an Immortals cave on the lower finger. Bai Xiaochun was very moved. Life on Corpse Peak was already much better than Middle Peak. 2 months went by, and Bai Xiaochun never left Corpse Peak. He continued to practice his cultivation and absorb blood qi. As he became more and more familiar with the practice of converging blood qi, he built up more and more undying sword qi. Now, when the blood qi spread outside of him, it would form the outline of a large sword, and quite rapidly at that. Of course, the amount of blood qi he required only grew. By this point, though, he didn't need to go out and about to get what he needed. He could simply remain in his Immortals cave and draw the blood qi toward him. Eventually, the Foundation Establishment Dharma protectors on the lower finger frowned as they realized what was happening. Although there was no sudden reduction, the gradual reduction of blood qi in the area reduced their cultivation speed. Soon, their patience began to grow thin, and their killing intent began to increase. Such feelings spread until even Bai Xiaochun became aware of it. Whenever he went out, his heart would pound because of the malevolent glares leveled at him. He suddenly had the feeling that if he did even the slightest thing wrong, their killing intent would explode in the form of action. These people are terrifying. Even saying a wrong word will cause them all to attack. They have no patience at all. I should probably just leave. He spent 2 more nervous months on Corpse Peak before coming to the conclusion that matters on Middle Peak had most likely calmed down. One night when no one was paying attention, he slipped away from Corpse Peak and headed back to his Immortals cave on Middle Peak. There, he carefully began to practice cultivation. He was careful not to absorb too much blood chi, which caused his progress to slow. However, considering that he was on the verge of a major breakthrough with the blood sword, he could deal with the slight reduction in speed. Another half-month passed. One day, Bai Xiaochun was sitting there with eyes closed as he cultivated the blood sword, when all of a sudden, he made a breakthrough with the blood annihilation world. His eyes snapped open, and he took a deep breath. Eyes shining brightly, his hands flashed in a double-handed incantation gesture, and he waved his finger out in front of him. Blood annihilation world. As his voice echoed out, the blood chi around him seethed. Blood chi also erupted out from inside of him, transforming into a blood mist that filled the Immortals cave. As it swirled, Bai Xiaochun's double-handed incantation transformed, and a piercing wind swept through the room, accompanied by cracking sounds. Soon, the mist began to converge together, transforming into the tip of a sword. Blood chi swirled from the tip down, quickly forming the blade, and then the hilt. In the end, it was a complete, blood-colored sword. It was bright red, and seemed strong enough to cut anything in its path. It radiated an ancient pressure that shook the soul. Anyone who looked at it would feel like they were wading in a sea of blood. From what Bai Xiaochun could tell, its power exceeded that of early Foundation establishment. In fact, he was sure that if he fueled it with Heaven Dao power, even mid-Foundation establishment's cultivators would be shocked at the sight. It worked, he said, laughing out loud. The sight of the enormous blood sword filled him with excitement, and convinced him that his months of hard work were worth it. Bai Xiaochun, he instantly closed his mouth. Slowly turning his head, his eyes went wide as he looked at something in the corner of the Immortals cave. Then, he began to sweat. Bai Xiaochun was certain that he had just looked over at that corner and seen nothing, but now, there was a rabbit standing there. Even more frightening was that the rabbit's ears were clearly pointed directly at Bai Xiaochun as if it had been listening to him just now. Most terrifying of all was that the rabbit was staring directly at him. From the look in its eyes, it was waiting for him to finish his sentence. He and the rabbit stared at each other for a moment, and then the rabbit burst into motion, speeding toward the main entrance of the Immortals cave. Bai Xiaochun shouted and leapt to block its path, but the rabbit was too fast. Bai Xiaochun could only stare with wide eyes as it vanished out the door. By this point he felt like he was about to go crazy. He knew that he could very well lose his head over this. If the talking rabbit said the wrong thing, and people found out he was Bai Xiaochun, he would definitely be killed. Although he'd only spoken half of a sentence, that half sentence was very dangerous, and he didn't even dare to think of what the consequences might be. Sweat began to drip down his face and neck. He almost considered staying inside and just letting the rabbit say what it wanted. He could scarcely believe that, despite how careful he had been, and how often he had checked his surroundings, the rabbit would manage to show up so unexpectedly. He wasn't even sure how much of what he'd said it had heard. "I'm gonna kill you," he cried, bursting out of his Immortals cave. However, even as he emerged, he saw the talking rabbit standing on top of a nearby tree, speaking. "Night Crypt, you two-timer. Did you forget our pledge of undying love? Did you forget our affection for each other? Why did you change so much?" The talking rabbit's voice was quite loud, and echoed out in all directions, causing quite a few Foundation establishment cultivators to look over in shock. Bai Xiaochun's jaw dropped. He wasn't sure who might have said such a thing, but he was now certain that the rabbit had been following him around for quite a while. Spine-tingling in fear, he howled, throwing all caution to the wind. Instantly, his right hand flashed with an incantation gesture, and he pointed out, causing blood chi to transform into sword chi that sped toward the rabbit. It was no ordinary sword chi, it was Bai Xiaochun's undying sword chi, and as soon as he unleashed it, the blood chi in the area was thrown into chaos. At the same time, the sword chi sped through the air, slashing into the tree and completely destroying it. In the nick of time, the rabbit flew out of the tree and sped off in the opposite direction. Outrageous, the rabbit bellowed as it raced along. "It's just a bit of blood chi, isn't it? I'm a Foundation establishment cultivator of the Bloodstream sect. I can't believe you people are trying to kill me. Are you trying to get me to leave the sect?" Bellowing, Bai Xiaochun flew after it, unleashing another blast of sword chi, which slammed into a blood cistern that the rabbit was passing, destroying it. "HMMMPHHH. If I absorb this blood chi secretly, nobody will ever realize it was me. It looks like this Immortals cave is vacant. They're trying to kill me. They're trying to kill me. The rabbit continued to spit out lines of dialogue as it ran along. At the same time, rumbling sounds echoed out as Bai Xiaochun chased after it, unleashing one blast of sword chi after another, destroying everything around the rabbit. The plants and trees were slashed to pieces, and even buildings were destroyed. Middle Peak was instantly thrown into chaos. Foundation establishment Dharma protectors poured out, to find Bai Xiaochun chasing a rabbit and unleashing countless blasts of sword chi. Some of them were slow to react, and when the rabbit ran by them, were hit by the blasts, causing blood to spray from their mouths. What are you doing, Night Crypt? Damn it. Do you have a death wish, Night Crypt? I let you get away alive all those months ago, and now you dare to show your face. The Foundation establishment cultivators were enraged, and yet, so was Bai Xiaochun. Shut the hell up, all of you, he bellowed, his eyes bloodshot. By this point, he had decided that he must kill the rabbit no matter what happened. Hands flashing in a double-handed incantation gesture, he unleashed more blasts of sword chi. The rabbit dodged back and forth, scurrying about in such a fashion that not a single bit of sword chi touched it. As for the Foundation establishment cultivators, they flew up into the air to attack Bai Xiaochun. Master God Diviner was in the crowd, smiling coldly. As far as he was concerned, Night Crypt was obviously a fool to have gotten so worked up over a mere rabbit. I like this rabbit, he murmured to himself. It's very interesting. I wonder whose pet it is? Some distance away, Song Ke was in secluded meditation beneath the blood waterfall. Suddenly, his eyes opened, and he frowned. A moment later, though, he simply closed his eyes again and continued meditating. At this point, the rabbit suddenly stopped next to a random immortal's cave and yelled out in a voice even louder than before. Bai Xiaochun, it almost seemed to roar the words at the top of its lungs. The surrounding Foundation establishment cultivators looked on in shock, and their pupils constricted. Bai Xiaochun was quite famous in the Bloodstream sect, and virtually anyone would try to kill him if they got the chance. Killing a chosen from the Spirit Stream sect, especially one who had reached Heaven Dao Foundation establishment, would count as a huge service to the sect. To hear this rabbit suddenly talking about Bai Xiaochun caused everyone to look at it eagerly, hoping to hear what it would say next about him. However, the rabbit simply stood there with a blank look on its face, not saying another word. Trembling inwardly, Bai Xiaochun bellowed, I, Night Crypt, cannot stand to live under the same sky as Bai Xiaochun. How dare you mention him in front of me? Tell me this instant where Bai Xiaochun is. With that, he waved his right hand, causing another blast of sword chi to shoot out. This one was even more powerful than before. As it closed in on the rabbit in a beam of bright light, the rabbit blurred into motion to dodge it. As a result, the Immortals' cave behind it was struck by the sword chi and immediately began to collapse. Inside the Immortals' cave was a blood bottle and a spell formation. Thanks to the massive blow, the blood bottle immediately shattered. Of course, that Immortals' cave belonged to Shui Mei, and was the location where everyone had recently attacked Bai Xiaochun. Afterward, Shui Mei had stabilized the blood bottle to keep it safe, but now it had been destroyed. Bai Xiaochun, the rabbit bellowed. However, it didn't say anything beyond those 3 words. Blinking, Bai Xiaochun's mind raced to come up with an idea of what to do. Trying to look as furious as possible, he shouted, keep talking. What comes after that? Then he continued to chase the rabbit, unleashing sword chi that slashed into the ground, destroying Immortals' caves, but not harming the rabbit. Bai Xiaochun, the rabbit was starting to get anxious, and yet, it had nothing else to say. Bai Xiaochun was starting to relax. Damn it, why won't you finish that sentence? He shouted. All of a sudden, he realized that he had pulled a fast one on the rabbit, who was now unable to say anything other than the first 3 words of the sentence. Bai Xiaochun, howled the rabbit, its eyes bright red. Tell me immediately. Bai Xiaochun raged. Is Bai Xiaochun in Bloodstream sect territory? My grudge with him goes all the way back to the fallen sword world. I can't live under the same sky as him. Bai Xiaochun must die. Inwardly, he was feeling very proud of himself, and he couldn't help but be pleased at how smart he was. With that, he unleashed another blast of sword chi, destroying another Immortal's cave. Tell me right now, what comes after the first part of that sentence? Bai Xiaochun had thrown all of Middle Peak into complete chaos. As for the rabbit, it was getting very anxious, and had even started trembling. Finally, it started to say more than the 3 words. Bai Xiaochun, Shui Mei, I dreamed of you last night. One of these days, I, Master God Diviner, will definitely make you mine. Bai Xiaochun, Elder Fang, stop it. People might see us. Bai Xiaochun, I, Song Ke, am in charge here, and the position of Bloodmaster belongs to me. And I'm in charge of you too, Shui Mei. The words being spoken by the rabbit caused all of Middle Peak to be rocked with astonishment. The Foundation establishment Dharma protectors and elders looked on with odd expressions, and soon, everyone went completely quiet. Only the voice of the rabbit could be heard, echoing about. Bai Xiaochun also looked shocked, and suddenly he worried that he had pushed the rabbit too far. Master God Diviner was there in the crowd, and to him, it felt like a cold chill was running up his spine. Suddenly, he also wanted to exterminate the rabbit. Shut up, that's complete nonsense. As soon as Master God Diviner lunged forward, Bai Xiaochun looked over at him with a strange expression, surprised at the information that the rabbit had just revealed. Did Master God Diviner really fancy the masked shrew Shui Mei? That's right, he cried, this rabbit is full of crap. Master God Diviner wasn't the only one to leap into action. Everyone who the rabbit mentioned began to tremble, and then flew out to kill it. Even Song Ke came speeding out from the blood waterfall, howling at the top of his lungs, looking like a blood-colored god as he unleashed deadly power. Shut up. When Song Ke thought about the fact that everyone on Middle Peak had heard what the rabbit just said, he was filled with the desire to rip the thing to pieces. The rabbit actually took advantage of the frenzy to vanish. Even after searching for it for some time, Bai Xiaochun couldn't find it. Although he was feeling much better than before, he made sure that his expression turned grimmer and grimmer. That rabbit is an abomination, he said loudly. I can't believe it never finished that sentence. Relieved, he was just about to head back to his immortals cave when he suddenly got a very uneasy feeling. That was when he realized that all of the Foundation establishment cultivators who had been chasing the rabbit were now staring at him. Song Q's eyes brimmed with murderous intentions. Although he hated the mysterious rabbit, the person he hated more was the one who had obviously forced the rabbit into unleashing a torrent of dialogue. Nightcrypt. Master God Diviner had a similar look on his face. Many of the other cultivators present had either been injured or had their immortals caves destroyed by Bai Xiaochun's sword chi. As of this moment, their desire to kill Nightcrypt was raging out of control. Nightcrypt, you destroyed my immortals cave. It's about time we settle accounts. You escaped last time, but now, you're gonna die. Nightcrypt. New grievances piled onto old ones. The surrounding Foundation establishment cultivators unleashed the power of their cultivation bases and prepared to eradicate Bai Xiaochun. There weren't even 100 Foundation establishment cultivators surrounding him, only a few dozen. Furthermore, most of them were in early Foundation establishment, although a handful were in mid-Foundation establishment. Thankfully, the mid-Foundation establishment cultivators only had grim looks on their faces and didn't actually attack. They had a different status than the early Foundation establishment crowd, and for them to join everyone else in trying to attack Bai Xiaochun would be too much of a loss of face. Even without them, though, there were still dozens of Foundation establishment Dharma protectors and elders, who were powerful enough to shake heaven and earth. Furthermore, in the Bloodstream sect, there was no such thing as debate and discussion, there was only the law of the jungle. Provoke me, and die. It was completely different from the Spirit Stream sect. Here, the only thing that mattered was strength. Bai Xiaochun's actions had enraged the people from Middle Peak, and now they were attacking him with deadly force that far surpassed anything from the Qi condensation stage. Divine abilities burst out, blood Qi surged, and blood swords unique to Middle Peak all appeared. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 blasts of sword Qi descended directly toward Bai Xiaochun. Bai Xiaochun was just calming down from the incident with the rabbit, but now, he began to shiver uncontrollably. It was as if every part of his body were screaming at him that he was in deadly peril. Booms echoed out, shaking everything in the area. The dozens of Foundation establishment cultivators all attacked at once, making it very difficult for Bai Xiaochun to dodge. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 blasts of sword Qi slammed into him. Let me explain, he said, staggering backward. Because of the blood Qi he had absorbed, his undying gold skin emanated blood-colored light. In combination with the undying Heavenly King, he was stronger than ever, and his defenses were even more ridiculously strong than before. The Foundation establishment cultivators gaped in shock, and many eyes went wide. This Nightcrypt has been secretly cultivating a body refinement technique. No wonder he was able to survive the fallen sword abyss. It was all thanks to that body refinement technique. His fleshly body defenses are so strong. Even our combined attack couldn't shake him. Their expressions turned very serious, and yet, they showed no signs that they would cease attacking Bai Xiaochun. The stronger he seemed, the more they wanted to kill him to stave off any problems from cropping up in the future. Cold gleams flickered in their eyes as they once again unleashed a combined attack. More than 10 beams of sword Qi slammed into Bai Xiaochun. No matter how he tried to evade or dodge, the dozens of Foundation establishment cultivators stayed hot on his tail, unleashing constant attacks. Booms rang out. Some people even went and destroyed his immortals cave. Run if you want, Night Crypt, you won't escape this time. Rumbling sounds filled the air as divine abilities and magical techniques slammed down. By this point, Bai Xiaochun was in a sorry state, having been repeatedly hit by numerous blasts of sword qi. Even with his undying live forever technique, blood still sprayed out of his mouth, until finally, he looked up, eyes bloodshot, expression vicious and even murderous. What people saw was Night Crypt, awe-inspiring, bloodthirsty, merciless, and completely enraged. As of this moment, his blood qi was bursting, and his killing intent surging. Enough running, he said, wiping the blood from his mouth. You buffoons have tried to kill me 3 times already. Things have gone too far. Do you really think I'm scared of you people? His hair was in disarray, and his clothing ripped nearly to shreds. From the moment he had arrived in the bloodstream sect, he had been on edge and nervous, and now, all of that anxiety had reached a bursting point. He was tired of being wounded so tight. These people wanted to kill him, and weren't holding anything back. Their intentions were clear: murder. The intense sensation of deadly crisis caused Bai Xiaochun to throw his head back and roar at the top of his lungs. Then he took a step forward, appearing directly in front of a young man in the early Foundation establishment stage. Bai Xiaochun's expression was vicious as he unleashed the mountain-shaking bash. Blood sprayed out of the Foundation establishment cultivator's mouth, along with a miserable shriek as he was sent tumbling backward like a kite with its string cut. At the same time, 7 or 8 blasts of sword qi shot toward Bai Xiaochun. However, his own blood qi erupted out, shoving them away. Rumbling sounds could be heard as he blurred into motion toward 2 middle peak Dharma protectors. In the time it takes a spark to fly off of a piece of flint, he was right in front of them, his arms outstretched. The 2 Dharma protectors' eyes widened, and they immediately unleashed their reserves of blood qi. Their hands flashed with incantations gestures, causing their qi to take form and rush forward to block Bai Xiaochun. However, his hands were filled with boundless power, and blasted through the blood qi as easily as a hammer smashes through ice. As the qi shattered, Bai Xiaochun's hands latched onto the arm of each Dharma protector. "Screw the hell off," he shouted. Then he jerked his hands to the side, and the 2 arms exploded into a cloud of blood. Agonized shrieks rang out as the 2 Dharma protectors flew through the air to slam into a nearby immortal's cave. Middle Peak was descending into chaos. Meanwhile, the disturbance to the blood qi in the sect caused quite a few Foundation establishment cultivators from Nameless Peak, Corpse Peak, and Lesser Marsh Peak to look over in surprise. Even the Grand Elders turned their heads to see what was happening, as did the Bloodmasters, who looked toward Middle Peak from within their temples. On Ancestor Peak, the Prime Elders sent out streams of divine sense to observe Bai Xiaochun fighting against the crowd on Middle Peak. Who is that kid? What a devilish personality. Look at how many people he got to attack him. Ha ha ha. Now that's how we do things in the Bloodstream sect. It doesn't matter how young you are, when people try to kill you, you have to fight back. As the cultivators from the other mountain peaks watched the excitement, Bai Xiaochun crushed one Foundation establishment cultivator after another. All of them were completely shaken, and left coughing up blood. Night Crypt. At that point, a cold snort echoed out as Song K transformed into a blood-colored mountain peak, complete with 3 30-meter-long blood-colored streams of sword qi that caused the entire area to shake. Sword qi? I have some too. Eyes bloodshot, Bai Xiaochun waved his right hand, unleashing the Blood Annihilation World technique. A stream of undying blood qi poured out from him, which he sent speeding toward Song K with the wave of a finger. This was no ordinary stream of blood qi. Close examination would reveal that it was laced with a golden color. As soon as it appeared, an indescribable aura erupted out. Massive rumbling sounds filled the air, and all of the blood qi in the area trembled as though a king had appeared, and even raced toward it at top speed. As the local blood qi was sucked into the sword qi, the image of the sword grew larger. In the blink of an eye, it became like a 30-meter-long mountain shooting up into the sky. Compared to this sword qi, all other sword qi was like filth. Only Bai Xiaochun's sword qi was the true and proper type. A domineering air seemed to fill it, like it was the ruler of all swords in the world. The sky shook, and everyone present felt their hearts pounding in their chests. The sword qi almost seemed impossible to control, as if it could shake everything in existence, even their cultivation bases. Everyone was completely and utterly shocked. What's going on? What kind of sword qi is that? Heavens! This Night Crypt has also been cultivating the Blood Annihilation World. When the sword qi appeared, even the Mid-Foundation establishment elders were shocked. Under the astonished gazes of all the onlookers, the spectacular sword chi shot toward Song Ke. Song Q's face fell, but he had no time to react. Heaven shaking, earth-shattering rumbling sounds echoed out as his 3 blasts of sword chi were completely destroyed. Even his mountain peak form was destroyed, and he was revealed, blood spraying out of his mouth, a look of astonishment on his face as he was sent tumbling backward. Impossible. Song Q's scalp was tingling in astonishment. Bai Xiaochun's sword chi left him completely and utterly shaken. He had never even seen sword chi like this. It was so mighty that it exceeded anything he could imagine. Even the sword chi he had developed by cultivation in the blood waterfall was completely cowed by it. He wasn't the only one who was shaken. Everyone in the area felt their minds reeling. Bai Xiaochun's domineering use of sword chi left their eyes wide and their scalps numb from the shock. The crowds on Lesser Marsh Peak, Nameless Peak, and Corpse Peak were also looking on with wide eyes. The grand elders of the 3 peaks were left gasping, and the Bloodmaster's eyes shone with intense light. Cries of astonishment could even be heard on Ancestor Peak. The level of that sword chi, its blood chi plasma, that kid's name is Night Crypt? What a genius. I can't believe he reached such a level completely under the radar. In the blood annihilation world, everything comes down to refining the blood. The 4 levels are refined blood chi plasma, inverse blood ancestral awakening, and blood chi tribulation. Even more streams of divine sense arrived on Middle Peak to observe the chaotic fighting. The highest echelons of the bloodstream sect leadership were now observing Bai Xiaochun's sword chi. It was at this point that Master God Diviner suddenly cried out, "Kill Night Crypt. If he doesn't die, he'll definitely try to get revenge on us in the future." With that, he performed an incantation gesture and attacked. Everyone else seemed to agree, as they all joined forces to attack Bai Xiaochun. Something's off about this guy. Song Ke shouted, glaring murderously at Bai Xiaochun. That's not the Middle Peak's blood annihilation world. He wasn't sure why, but after exchanging blows with this Night Crypt, his heart was filled with deep, profound hatred for him, hatred that seemed completely irreconcilable. It was a sudden and inexplicable feeling, but there it was in his heart. Bai Xiaochun dodged the attacks, and then looked around at the brutal, vicious expressions on the faces of the people surrounding him. Suddenly, he began to laugh with rage, and his eyes burned with murderous coldness. You think this isn't the blood annihilation world? Well, I think I need to show you people what the blood annihilation world really looks like. With that, he leapt high up into the air. Even as the Foundation establishment cultivators turned into beams of light to follow him, he waved his hand in the direction of Middle Peak. Blood chi, gather. Bai Xiaochun threw his head back and roared. As his hand waved through the air, something completely and utterly shocking occurred in the midst of the Foundation establishment cultivators. Throughout the entire lower finger of Middle Peak, countless strands of blood chi seemed to answer Bai Xiaochun's call, almost as if they were related to him. They almost seemed to possess intelligence as they sped through the air, radiating something like joy. Countless strands of blood chi shot toward Bai Xiaochun, merging into him. Every plant, every immortal's cave, every blood cistern, every blood waterfall, every inch of the ground emitted blood chi, which then raced toward Bai Xiaochun. Rumble. It was a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering scene of shocking nature. Everything turned bright red as matchlessly strong blood chi blotted out the sky. A blood mist rapidly formed around Bai Xiaochun, a mist that rose high into the air above him. It was as if Bai Xiaochun had become the king of all the blood chi in the area, as if a single word from his mouth would cause it all to rush to his side. All of the blood chi in all of the lower finger of Middle Peak was churning in response to his words. However, the effect wasn't limited to the lower finger area. Even the blood chi in the upper finger was stirring into motion. A massive column of blood-colored light surrounded Bai Xiaochun, shaking everything around it as it shot into the sky. All of Middle Peak was devolving into complete and utter chaos. When the surrounding dozens of Foundation establishment cultivators saw what was happening, they were flabbergasted, and began to shake in terror as they realized that the blood chi in their own bodies was on the verge of bursting out into the open. Even the mid-Foundation establishment cultivators had looks of utter disbelief on their faces. At the same time, beams of light shot up from the upper finger as numerous late Foundation establishment experts appeared. Each and every one seemed completely and utterly taken aback. What kind of freak is this guy? I can't believe the blood chi is heeding his commands. Damn it, how could Night Crypt be so powerful? Why didn't he reach Earthstring Foundation establishment? The cultivators on Lesser Marsh Peak, Nameless Peak, and Corpse Peak were all struck speechless. Even the grand elders of the 3 other mountain peaks all had looks of complete awe on their faces as they watched events playing out on Middle Peak. This is the mere sight of it. The blood masters from the 3 other mountains had all emerged from their temples to watch what was happening. They were all young men, each of whom radiated enigmatic auras. Serious expressions could be seen on their faces, and their hearts trembled because of the waves of shock which battered them inwardly. On the upper finger of Middle Peak, Grand Elder Song Junwan was in the middle of an important meeting with the mountain's 9 Bloodstreak elders. Although they had been aware of the fierce fighting going on in the lower finger area, they hadn't been paying too much attention. But now, the sudden eruption of blood chi left them all completely shocked. That was especially true when the blood chi in the upper finger began to stir into motion. A look of complete incredulity appeared on Song Junwan's face. Without even formally adjourning the meeting, she flew out, followed by the 9 astonished Bloodstreak elders. The 10 of them saw all of the blood chi on Middle Peak erupting in an unheard of fashion, and then saw Bai Xiaochun hovering in midair, hair flying around him, eyes shining with coldness, surrounded by a boundlessly somber and desolate air. He looked like a blood devil. This, heavens! All of the blood chi on the whole mountain peak is gathering around him. The Bloodstreak elders were completely shaken, and Song Junwan was beginning to pant. At the same time, even more divine sense converged on the area from the prime elders on Ancestor Peak. None of them could remain even the least bit calm. Inverse blood ancestral awakening? How is this even possible? I can't believe young Night Crypt has such destiny. He's reached inverse blood ancestral awakening. Damn it, who tested this kid's latent talent in the beginning? If we'd known he could pull off inverse blood ancestral awakening with his blood sword cultivation, we would have definitely made sure he reached Earthstring Foundation establishment. As the prime elders reeled in shock, an even stronger stream of divine sense appeared, something which completely surpassed the prime elders. It was so powerful that all heaven and earth seemed to distort because of its mere presence. An ancient voice suddenly echoed out into the minds of the prime elders. Inverse blood ancestral awakening can be stumbled upon by chance, but can never be pursued directly. Among 100,000 cultivators who practice bloodstream sect techniques, it would be difficult to find even one person who can build up the reserves necessary to have such a unique ancestral awakening. An opportunity like this has only presented itself twice in the past. Few people could ever have detected this within him ahead of time. As everyone watched in shock, blood chi surged like mad into the trembling Bai Xiaochun, who let out a long, piercing cry. The amount of blood chi visible was shocking. Bai Xiaochun was like a black hole, sucking it all in, and as he did, his undying skin shone with dazzling light. As of this moment, there was nothing golden about that light, it was utterly and thoroughly the color of blood. That blood color was a symbol that anyone could identify as the hallmark of the bloodstream sect. There was no better way for someone to show that they were using the techniques of the bloodstream sect than to do exactly what Bai Xiaochun was doing. As the blood-colored light spread out in all directions, Bai Xiaochun threw his head back and bellowed, and an enormous figure appeared behind him, a creature with green skin, vicious-looking facial features, and long, protruding tusks. It had claws sharp enough to tear down all walls, a pointed horn that could rip open the heavens, and a long, scale-covered tail that could sweep across anything and everything. That creature was none other than the legendary Berserk Ghost. The sudden appearance of the Berserk Ghost indicated that Bai Xiaochun had finally completed the first level of the Undying Heavenly King. The instant the image of the Berserk Ghost appeared, the eyes of Lesser Marsh Peak's Grand Elder went wide. As for the Blood Master from Lesser Marsh Peak, he was shaking visibly, and his eyes were glowing with bright light. Lesser Marsh Peak must have this Night Crypt, shouted the Blood Master. The Grand Elder from Lesser Marsh Peak had the same reaction, and simply couldn't contain his excitement. On Lesser Marsh Peak, they had a secret magic that had come from years of research into the hand of the Blood Ancestor, a secret magic that was based on a totem tattoo that depicted the Berserk Ghost. Shockingly, Bai Xiaochun's ancestral awakening caused an actual projection of the Berserk Ghost to appear. Everyone on Lesser Marsh Peak was being driven to complete madness. At the same time, Bai Xiaochun hovered in midair, roaring at the top of his lungs, absorbing all of the blood chi in the area. After flowing into him, the blood chi then emerged behind him to form the shape of an enormous blood sword. At first, only the tip was fully formed, but as he absorbed more blood chi, the blade began to form, and then the hilt. Although all of this takes a bit of time to describe, it was accomplished in only a few breaths worth of time. In the end, an enormous, blood-colored sword appeared. Everyone gasped as Bai Xiaochun raised both hands and grasped the hilt of the sword. "This is my blood annihilation world," he shouted. "You people want to kill me? Well, what if I kill you first?" Then, he slashed the sword down, sending an arc of blood-colored light shooting toward the dozens of Foundation establishment cultivators below. As the massive sword descended, more blood chi in the area rushed toward it, merging into it, causing it to grow larger and larger. In the blink of an eye, it was over 30 meters long, radiating an explosive aura of extermination. The Foundation establishment cultivators' faces went pale. Howling, they joined forces, unleashing all of the power at their disposal to defend themselves, even their trump cards. Boom! When the sword hit the cultivators in the front line, they screamed, and their bodies began to tremble on the verge of collapse. Apparently, it started a chain reaction which quickly spread to the cultivators behind them. The blood sword attack which they had just sustained was now threatening to destroy them all. Song Ke was in the group, and a vicious look appeared on his face for the second time as he prepared to put his life on the line to counterattack. However, it was at this point that a cold snort echoed out. Enough is enough. Blood chi, disperse. The words echoed out like thunder, causing the blood sword in Bai Xiaochun's hands to tremble, and then rapidly begin to fall apart and disperse. All of Middle Peak trembled as a powerful force swept over it. At the same time, countless spell formations and magical symbols appeared on the surface of the ground, which had been placed on the hand specifically to control the blood chi. Bai Xiaochun's eyes widened as he sensed the blood chi responding to the voice which had just spoken. It was no longer under his control, almost as if that voice were its true master, and had a much higher level of control over it than he did. However, moments later, he realized that the truth of the matter was that this person's control over the blood chi was being exerted by outside force, in sharp contrast to himself. After all, he was related to the blood chi. Rage filled Bai Xiaochun's heart. At the moment, he didn't care who that voice belonged to, he couldn't hold back from saying, "No, enough is not enough. When they tried to kill me, how come you didn't intervene then? Now I'm trying to kill them, and suddenly you say, enough is enough. I refuse to accept this." From the moment he'd arrived in the bloodstream sect, he'd been running around with his tail stuck between his legs. Now he was finally taking some action, only to receive the short end of the stick. At the moment, his desire to kill these Foundation establishment cultivators only continued to grow. "This is their fault," he cried, eyes bright red. Although he knew what he was doing might not be the best choice, he exerted all his power to call out to the huge hand, all with the intention of throwing the bloodstream sect into chaos. Even if he had to flee the sect afterward, this was his choice. As the blood chi dispersed, as intense pressure weighed down, as the Foundation establishment cultivators gasped, he burst into motion. In the blink of an eye, he was in front of one of the Foundation establishment Dharma protectors, whereupon he clenched his hand into a fist and punched out. That cultivator had just been breathing a sigh of relief. Too slow to react to what was happening, he was struck directly by the fist strike, causing blood to spray out of his mouth as his heart and blood vessels began to explode. His eyes went wide, and before he could say anything more, he was dead. Everyone devolved into chaos and began to flee. Bai Xiaochun was tired of being wronged, and had thrown caution to the wind. His expression was grim, and his eyes radiated killing intent as he attacked once again. Bai Xiaochun's eyes were bright red. He had already dealt with people who wanted to kill him back when he was being chased by the Luokan clan. That was when he came to realize that the only option in such a situation was to be more vicious than his opponents. Furthermore, he had to kill them before they killed him. That was the only way to stay alive. He transformed into a beam of light, causing heaven shaking, earth-shattering rumbling to fill the area as he appeared next to another of the Foundation establishment Dharma protectors who had attacked him moments ago, and directly bashed into him. A boom echoed out, and the Dharma protector screamed miserably as his body shattered into pieces. Bai Xiaochun shot through the blood and gore, then suddenly sped backward and grabbed a hold of the neck off another cultivator who had been preparing to launch a sneak attack. The man screamed as he was subsequently ripped to shreds. Bai Xiaochun was already soaked in blood, his breath coming in ragged pants, and his eyes bright red. "Come on," he bellowed. "What are you running for? Didn't you want to kill me? Bring it on." He blurred into motion, appearing behind a terrified, fleeing Foundation establishment cultivator. In the blink of an eye, Bai Xiaochun's hand clasped onto the man's shoulder. Howling, the man tried to perform an incantation gesture, but before he could, Bai Xiaochun's other hand grabbed his neck and squeezed down hard. A cracking sound echoed out, and the man was dead. As Bai Xiaochun turned back around, the other Foundation establishment cultivators fled like mad, faces filled with terror. Some dove into their immortals' caves and activated the defensive spell formations, others simply tried to get as far away as possible. Some of them had banded together and were erecting a giant defensive spell formation to prevent Bai Xiaochun from getting to them. Song Ke and Master God Diviner were in that group. You're not even human. I've never seen a fiendish devil like this before. Heavens. Night Crypt is terrifying. Bai Xiaochun's explosive burst of violence left them completely shaken. To them, he seemed like a fiend, a monster, his clothes soaked in blood, his expression vicious and filled with murder. Such brutality, such madness, left the minds of all cultivators present completely reeling. Even Song Ke was gasping, and as for Master God Diviner, he was completely scared out of his mind. These were all bloodstream sect disciples, people who disciples from the other sects viewed as wildly brutal. However, as of this moment, those very disciples were looking at Bai Xiaochun and thinking that his brutality was beyond description. Surprisingly, whoever had just spoken out to stop Bai Xiaochun didn't say anything further. Even the prime elders and the others were simply watching, clearly moved, and yet doing nothing to intervene. In fact, some of them even approached in person to watch the slaughter unfold. Breathing heavily, Bai Xiaochun looked over at the group in the spell formation, then grinned coldly as he shot toward a nearby immortal's cave. In the time it takes an incense stick to burn, he used his fleshly body power alone to batter the cave open. Moments later, he emerged from the cave dragging the corpse of the Foundation establishment cultivator who had been hiding within. He tossed the corpse out in front of the spell formation, then sat down off to the side, exhausted. Wiping the blood off of his face, he looked up at the onlookers hovering in midair. Suddenly, he blinked. Waves of exhaustion spread out through him, wrapping around his muscles and causing them to go slack. At the same time, he felt fear and regret. Although his outburst had allowed him to give vent to his anger, he was now getting nervous. I didn't use any spirit stream sect techniques, he thought, trembling inwardly, only stuff from the bloodstream sect. Technically speaking, my body refinement magic is connected to the bloodstream sect. Maybe they'll punish me, but they won't kill me. Will they? Although he thought calling out to the giant hand to try to destroy the bloodstream sect, he wasn't confident at all in being able to succeed. Middle Peak was completely silent. Even in the bloodstream sect, slaughter like this was a rarity. To see such a fight left everyone completely shocked, and at the same time, changed their understanding of Night Crypt. The silence was broken by the ancient voice. Finished killing people? At the same time, a blurry figure slowly materialized in front of Bai Xiaochun. It was a middle-aged man wearing a long, blood-colored robe. He had his hands clasped behind his back as he hovered there, looking coldly at Bai Xiaochun. He radiated a sensation of terrifying blood qi, something that seemed to resonate with heaven and earth, to connect with Middle Peak itself. That blood qi became a mighty pressure that caused even Bai Xiaochun's spiritual seas to vibrate. When the man looked at Bai Xiaochun, it felt like he could see right through him, peer into his very depths, see past all illusions. Bai Xiaochun shivered. Thankfully, the mask he was wearing was a precious treasure from the mysterious sect, and still managed to conceal him. After a moment, the man muttered to himself and retracted his vision. With that, he waved his right hand, sending a small bottle flying toward Bai Xiaochun. Exceptional innate talent, inverse blood ancestral awakening. Even better than that, a devilish personality. Sadly, you're only at Mortal Dao Foundation establishment. There are 3 spirit blood pills in that bottle. They should heal your injuries and also make you more sensitive toward blood qi. With that, the man sighed, turned, and took a step forward. A wind blew past, and he was gone. Huh? Bai Xiaochun looked around in shock. He had been fully prepared to be punished, but instead, the man had gifted him with a bottle of medicinal pills. Up in midair, the grand elders of the mountain peaks looked down with shining eyes. The reason none of them had spoken up earlier was because of the arrival of the Patriarch. Night Crypt's transformation had been so monumental that the Patriarch had personally come to inspect the situation. Considering he had found no problems, the Grand Elder's passions now burned even hotter than before. Not only did Night Crypt have incredible natural talent, he had killed several people in very rare fashion. Even the Patriarch said he had a devilish personality. All of the Grand Elders were impressed by Night Crypt's genius. Then they thought back to how domineering he had been in the fight over the Foundation establishment pills, and their admiration grew stronger. Although killing was against sect rules, they didn't really care. In the bloodstream sect, the law of the jungle prevailed. Not a single one of them could claim to have hands free of blood. When people didn't know what was best for them, and provoked powerful experts, then the fault for their deaths lay at their own hands. When it came to low-level cultivators, the sect rules were more strictly enforced, but that was for their own protection. Foundation establishment cultivators and the powerful experts above them respected strength and strength alone. Furthermore, Bai Xiaochun's ability to piss people off was quite moving. There was a big difference between making everyone like you and making everyone hate you, but in the end, the result was the same as far as the leaders of the sect were concerned. When it came to success in those matters, the former would be champions of justice, the latter, devils. Considering he had such a devilish personality, if Nightcrypt could stay alive, then once his cultivation base improved, he would be a champion of the ages. Either he would conquer everything under the heavens, or the heavens would conquer him. The Grand Elder from Lesser Marsh Peak, the tall, burly cultivator, flew out with a smile on his face. Junior brother Nightcrypt, come with me to Lesser Marsh Peak. With that body refinement technique of yours, it would be a huge waste for you to not come to Lesser Marsh Peak. If you agree, I'll let you reside on the upper finger. Come, I guarantee you'll make incredible, unheard of achievements in body refinement. Bai Xiaochun was a bit stunned by the sudden outpouring of words from the Grand Elder of Lesser Marsh Peak. Before he could even react, though, the Grand Elder from Corpse Peak stepped forward. Ignore him, Nightcrypt. Join us on Corpse Peak. Corpse Peak will be your home for all eternity. Come, you can have your pick of all the colorful corpses we have. Junior brother Nightcrypt, they're not being sincere, cried the dwarf from Nameless Peak, who was ready to go all out to win over Bai Xiaochun with his inverse blood ancestral awakening. Come to Nameless Peak. I'll let you join the circle of Bloodstreak Elders. With the power of Nameless Peak behind you, no one will ever dare to provoke you again. Bai Xiaochun was at a loss for words. He had caused a huge disaster, killed 7 or 8 Foundation establishment cultivators in a row, caused chaos to Middle Peak's blood chi, and had completely ignored that middle-aged man. Although he didn't know who that man was, he assumed he was a prime elder, or maybe even a patriarch. If he had defied someone like that back in the Spirit Stream sect, and also been responsible for such a disaster, according to the sect rules, he would have been sent to the Hall of Justice to be skinned alive, bereft of his cultivation base, and then destroyed in body and soul. However, in the Bloodstream sect, everything was the opposite. As he stood there stupefied, a flirtatious laugh echoed out as the bewitchingly beautiful Song Junwan appeared. A fragrant breeze accompanied her arrival, and a gleam of deep praise could be seen in her eyes as she looked at Bai Xiaochun as though he were a priceless gem. She came to a stop right in front of him, then turned to face everyone else. This is Middle Peak. Are you people here to openly undermine me? Bai Xiaochun blinked at the sight of Song Junwan standing in front of him. She was dressed as audaciously as usual. Her skirt had a long slit up the side, revealing her milky white legs, a sight which caused Bai Xiaochun's eyes to go wide. Before he realized what was happening, he was staring. The other 3 Grand Elders could see exactly what Song Junwan was doing, and they also noticed how Bai Xiaochun was staring at her. They sighed at Song Junwan's trickery, but could do nothing about it. Sighing longingly at Bai Xiaochun, they turned and left. After they were gone, Song Junwan's smile vanished, and her face became very grim as she looked around at the Foundation establishment cultivators of Middle Peak. As her gaze passed over them, they trembled and bowed their heads silently. Song Ke seemed more scared than anyone, and didn't even dare to look up. From a young age, he had always feared his aunt. You're all dismissed, Song Junwan said coolly. Don't forget to come back later and clean this place up. Everyone breathed sighs of relief, and then left respectfully. Soon, the area was silent once again. Song Junwan turned her attention back toward Bai Xiaochun, an enigmatic smile on her face as she leaned forward and lifted his chin with her fair, jade-like hand, forcing him to look her in the eye. Seen enough, little bro Nightcrypt. Blushing, Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat and stood up straight, then clasped hands and bowed. Greetings, big sis Song. You need to be a bit more careful in the future. The Bloodstream sect is a chaotic place, and it always has been. Maybe if things were different, we would be stronger in some ways, but there is nothing that can be done about it. All you can do is continue to find powerful enemies to defeat to impress people. As long as the patriarchs are around, the sect will remain whole. They can suppress the chaos when necessary. For now, stay on Middle Peak. You'll be safe here, and the stronger you get, the more respect you will be shown. She smiled, and it was a smile like a blooming rose, making her somehow more indescribably beautiful than ever. After a moment of hesitation, Bai Xiaochun asked, Big sis Song, was that a patriarch just now? That was Patriarch Limitless, she replied softly. Seeing Bai Xiaochun's shocked reaction, she covered her smile with her hand and then left in a gust of fragrant wind. Bai Xiaochun stood there for a long moment before taking a deep breath. So, that was the consummate chosen from 800 years ago, Master Limitless. Bai Xiaochun looked around again, shaken. The more time that passed, the more he marveled at how well the Bloodstream sect treated him. Back in the Spirit Stream sect, he was always punished for causing disasters. Here, they not only withheld punishment, they actually rewarded him. All of the mountain peaks were fighting over him, and to top it off, Grand Elder Song Junwan was a smoking hot babe. This place was the perfect location to cultivate the undying live forever technique. It was his own personal holy land, filled with blood chi. What a great sect. Shaking his head, he realized he had to adjust his way of thinking. He was from the Spirit Stream sect, an enemy of the Blood Stream sect. And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Blood Stream sect was really great. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.